Welcome to Pour Over Marketing. I'm Rob Southgate. We are back in the States. This looks too tight. There we go. Looks better. It's supposed to be a casual morning show, and here I am with my shirt all buttoned up. Look at my hair. This is, well, it's a morning show. It's supposed to be casual and drinking coffee. Welcome to the show. I'm excited to get into this one. I have so many things I want to discuss. So let's start with where I've been. We were in Paris last week, and we did Pour Over International, which was a lot of fun. Molly and I, because of the time change, we missed it. We missed our time by an hour. We thought we had it right on, and then Molly and I were out, and Maeve wrote, "Did you forget Pour Over?" I'm like, "But no, it's shoot." So we were off by an hour, but that's okay. We still ended up streaming an episode, and I don't know. We didn't have anybody live watching us, which was disappointing because I was hoping that people would want to engage since we were there in Paris, broadcasting from the street. But we ended up in a square. I don't know if we call it a square, but it was an outdoor part right by the water in a park. There was a statue and everything. We were sitting right there, and Molly and I just sat down and held the camera up, and boom, off to the races we went and did a pour over from right there. We only did a short one, but if you missed it, go to New Media Lab or go to my Facebook page and you can watch it. And it was pretty interesting. We were talking about the windows, the Christmas windows that we encountered. And we had kind of a visceral reaction to it because being from Chicago, we used to have these incredible Christmas windows. And they haven't been great for a long time. But then this was great. So there you go. Watch that episode. We talk all about it. We've got somebody here, probably my mom lurking. That's usually who it is, or Maeve watching, because she just can't get enough of my clowny hair. I'm getting a haircut today because it's bad. It is bad. I swear, for me, when I go south quickly, it's only been 2 weeks since like trimming everything up, and my God, I looked like Grizzly Adams by the time I got back. For those younger people, Grizzly Adams was a mountain man. For those younger than that, mountain men were people that lived in the mountains off the land. Okay. So I want to talk about a different part of this Paris experience. The marketing part. I was trying very hard to notice things. I had said to Maeve and Molly, I wanted pictures of windows and displays and things that struck them. I also was trying to take note of things, behaviors and that I was noticing. And at the end of the day, I don't think there's anything shocking or revelatory about it. I think it's the same old, and I think it's the same old that I've said on here, but we're going to say it again because it's so important. The things I noticed that worked were things like the attention to detail, the attention to curb appeal. These were obviously like we went into there were the regular street, walking down the streets, lots of shops, lots of places to grab food, whatever. And that was fine. One thing I noticed about that was the cafes were spectacular. Like, there's a lot of competition for food there, a lot of restaurants, a lot of competition for the cafe level, as well as the, higher end restaurant level. We didn't really get into the higher end restaurant stuff, but we did walk by a million cafes. And one thing I noticed is you've got this competition. It's like being in an artist alley. It's like being on the internet. It's like being in a magazine. How do you grab that attention? How do you differentiate yourself? And I was really trying to notice, what was it? Or at least what were they doing? And one big thing that stood out was they were, in general, like we'll go with the cafes, we're playing a higher level game. They were paying attention to the details. They were standing out. Give you an example. We went to a Japanese restaurant. Yes, we went to Paris. We ate sushi. We went to a Japanese restaurant. We went to a Thai restaurant. That's what we do. And then we we got our food from grocery stores. Hey, it's what we like to eat, and we wanted to try the cuisine. There you go. We were trying the cuisine that we wanted to try. So I went out of focus. Let's see if that brings it back. So what we noticed when we went to this Japanese restaurant was little things. First of all, it was very tiny. It was the size of like our kitchen. I mean, it was really small. They had 2 rows of tables. The tables were they weren't 2 feet wide. Maybe they were, maybe a foot and a half. They were small and they were long. And then you were kind of crammed in. So, I mean, it was pretty small. And then they had, seating by the window, and then seating at a bar thing behind us, like I don't want to say a bar, but like, how you have the elevated table and the higher chairs. They had one of those behind us, but I don't think they had chairs there, if I remember right. Anyway, it was very tiny. But what I'm pointing out about it is they made the most out of the aesthetic. They made the most out of the experience. So, first of all, they had really interesting plants around. It created a really nice visual. It didn't feel like, and this is something that I notice here versus there. You go into most Chinese restaurants, especially that cafe level type, and they all kind of look the same. They all have similar vibes going on. You go to pizza places, they have similar vibes going on. They don't do a lot to stand out. And then you'll go to a restaurant, like there was a place here called Bacchus Nibbles that we used to go to pre-gluten allergies. And they, oh, good morning, Chelsea. I'm glad you're here. Welcome. Oh man, I've got a little bit of a cough today. Allergies. Anyway, at Bacchus Nibbles, they were more like a French or Italian. No, they're a French, I think, restaurant. But they made the most out of the aesthetics. It didn't look inside like any other restaurant. And I know when you go to the higher end restaurants, they have their unique look and vibe. But when you go to the mid level and lower, a lot of times they kind of are somewhat generic about what they do. Similar things going on. Take, for example, like a Chili's versus a TGI Fridays. You go into them and it's like, can I really tell the difference? Really? I mean, you can, but whereas like this little Japanese restaurant we went into, being that small, you would think it would be pretty basic because that's how it would be here typically. But instead, it was all the details. The water was served in these little tiny silver metal mugs. They were tiny. They were smaller than a coffee mug, a regular coffee mug. So they were maybe little 6-ounce mugs that look like a metal coffee mug. Or to us, it might be what you would almost like a metal creamer. But they were not a creamer. They were wider. So it had that. It had, I don't know. It was every little piece of it had a unique feel to it. The food, they called each of the things they served, you could order a bowl or a bento. And a bento was a plate, just like a bento box where things were separated. So it had, the one I ordered had a curry meat, curry beef, and then it had like I want to say a sweet potato thing or something. It had a little salad. It had uh, each of these things all the way around the plate, right? But they were all separated. It created this great visual. Once again, attention to detail. When I looked to the front counter was decorated in such a way that, yes, it was serviceable for them because it is so small. They have to have to go boxes and stuff there. But instead of having them piled up everywhere, or I don't know what I see a lot here uh, with this kind of thing where it's like, this is the counter, this is it. It was like, no, it has some of the things we need, but they were kind of below and there was still decoration within. The closest thing I can describe is in our living room. We have our TV. We took a bookshelf unit from IKEA and we turned it on its side, and we have albums in there. We have books in there. We have like a cactus plant thing in there. We have a decorative ball in there. So it's like it creates these different things. That's what it was like. It had all these like elements to it, but they were pertinent to what we were seeing. It was creating the experience. And I found this in so many of the cafes. We're walking by, we're looking in, and you would go, it would be very easy to scream, we're a cafe by having similar things. I would say the only similar thing that I noticed was they had fronts that were open with tables and chairs out front. But what they even did with that would be unique. The one that we saw that Maeve and I both were like, oh, look at that. It had same thing, right? Tables and chairs, little small club tables, chairs out front. And often they would have their own, like this one would have a certain style of red chair. This one would have a wood chair, whatever. The one was awesome. It was just a regular little cafe. It wasn't like disco cafe or anything, but on the seats, they had white, shaggy fur. It was so like you walk by and you're like, I can't help but notice it. And see, that's the key. When you saw past it, you were like, that place looks really cool. That looks like one we want to check out. Hey, let's look at the menu. They're grabbing your attention. They're doing that lease line capture, right? But it's by making it look unique, not like arrows. Come here. Not like here, when you go in the city and you go by certain places, they'll put lights out front that are like, woo, come on in. No, no, no. This was more like, how do I say it, organic? It felt like, wow, somebody liked the fur on the chairs and they knew it would be unique, so they added it in, and it was part of the whole aesthetic, was part of the feel of the place. So what I'm getting at for you guys and for me is I don't care where it is. I don't care if it's your internet. I don't care if it's, your website, your social media. You've got a booth at something. You've got a store. You've got a cash register, and that's it, a cash wrap. What can you do to make it unique, to make it stand out? Because that was just it. You're walking down the street. There were streets where there'd be cafe, 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 bakery, cafe, bakery, 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 cafe, and you're like, which one am I going to go to? They all had pastries in the window. They all had whatever. Some of them would be unique, like this is a creperie. This one is a, whatever. But a lot of this stuff, I have a feeling you went in and you got sandwiches, pizza slices, things like that. If you went to the sushi places, it was like, it's sushi, but what do they do to stand out? And it's all about that curb appeal. It's all about creating that aesthetic, but making it real. Chinto, you're so right. It's not putting inflatable waving arm people. They do that here. I didn't see any of that. It does seem to work because it grabs your attention, the visual. But if you had something like that there, it would have seemed so kitschy, so out of place. And I think that's what I'm saying is you want to try to elevate your game, uh, and really think about it. We could sit here and spit out 8 million ideas about like, what could you do? What could you do? What you could do? But the real bottom line is you need to take each thing And just like we have our lists of like, well, what's our strategy? What is our value proposition? What is our goal? What is our curb appeal? When we had our store, that was something Maeve and I really paid attention to. We wanted to create a unique look on the outside. One thing that we did was we had 4 big windows, and those could be very time consuming, putting things up and figuring out what you wanted in them. When we looked at the other baby stores, the competition, they generally would put a crib and a thing and a thing. We were like, okay, there's a stroller, there's a crib, there's a whatever. And they would put nice bedding, and you go, oh, neat. But we would say, how do we differentiate? We want to show what we have. We want it to be beautiful. We want it to attract the eye so that you go, oh, I want that. But then what is that other thing? What is that X factor? And that's what we were seeing in Paris. A lot of X factor, the little things, the details that made you go, hmm. Here, I'm going to pull this up. There's a popular sushi place in Bolingbrook. Their strategy was making it one-piece theme. Outside looks like a regular restaurant, but inside you are taken into a pirate world. Cool. So there you've got. I love that. I love those pop-up type things like that. The restaurants where they make that unique experience. So from the outside, even maybe curb appeal there is it's a sushi place, but the inside is this experience. Maybe they don't need to capture. Maybe there's not 5 sushi restaurants or 5 restaurants that are in that same cost bracket that are vying for the same customer. But they know, yeah, people are going to come here. So what can we do to make it unique? What can you do to make what you do unique? So I know I've got people in our hi Serena, hi Chinto. I haven't said hi to you guys yet. Chelsea, I know all 3 of you do conventions, and you have your table and you have your books and your artwork, and you're trying to figure out how do I display this to capture people, right? And there are lots of ways to set your thing up. And if you walk through a convention, we're going to talk specifically about like comics and pop culture and books for a minute here. When you walk through, you look at the tables. Do you really see a lot of difference other than this guy does the God Hates Astronaut book and he's sitting there and he's got his banner, he's got his books, and then next to him is the guy that does Gail Simone is there, let's say, and it's got Gail Simone and it's got her banner and it's got some of her books and she's signing. Then you'll see occasionally somebody that like makes an entryway. Usually it's like the anime people, and they have their little entryway and they have their little door and they have their stuff all around it, trying to make faster lease line, like, oh, look at my stuff. But what do they do to stand out? What do they do that's unique? So when I consult with people about this specifically, one of the things I hammer is their social media, because so many people that do this do nothing with their social media, or they do so little that it's like you're not telling people where you are. You're not making something unique. When we do Writers Row, we actually make artwork for all the panels we do, and we promote the panels. People don't usually do that, but that's why we have success with our panels. That's why the cons fall over themselves for what we do, because they're like, you hit it from 100 ways, right? And we have really cool visuals, and we have like kind of guidelines that we work with that. But there's also the lease line capture. So I'll look at a table and there'll be nobody at the table. And the first thing I talk to them about is their social media, because that usually is one of the key factors for why people aren't standing there talking to them. But number 2, and this is a huge one, is what we're talking about right now. It is the curb appeal. It is the lease line capture. What are you doing? And you, as the entrepreneur, need to step back from what you're doing. Take your ego out of it and say, how do I make it unique? What are the attention to detail that I need here? What are my colors? You know, that color theory is big in marketing. Certain colors trigger certain things. Do I have a strong color presence? Look at websites. If you start looking up websites and color theory on websites, you'll see that, like Coke has Coke Red. That's the name of the color, Coca-Cola Red. It's not only across their branding, but that color red is a buying signal in people's minds. That color. Red is a buying color. Blue is a calming color. Green is a high-end color, depending on the shade of green. So you look up the color and you go, how do I build what I'm doing to have this unique experience? Because if I just have a tablecloth and books or art and me sitting there, what makes somebody come and talk to me? Yes, you're amazing art. Right. But there's also 10 other artists right next to you that have amazing art. So what is that curb appeal? What is that unique thing that you bring to it? What is that attention to detail that you can put into it? One of the things that we always did when we did our own things is we would step out of the booth. Like if it was Maeve and I, Maeve would sit in the booth and I'd step out and I'd look at the booth. And then we would switch and we'd say, okay, what are we missing? What do we want to change? What are cool things that might attract people? But beyond that, how do we differentiate? How do we stand out a little bit? Because if your tablecloth is book, pen, sign-up sheet, banner, everybody's doing that. But what did they do in that Japanese restaurant? They used these little silver cups that created a unique visual. They had certain plates. Their food was presented in a certain way. Their front counter looked a certain way. Like each of these things were paid attention to. Doesn't mean that you have to be precise like that. No, we went to a sushi restaurant that didn't do all of that, but they had unique artwork. They had fun artwork around the place. It was really tiny and it was packed. But it felt very much like you were in like a little sushi place in Japan. Like it had that vibe, not the neon-y type, but more like, hey, this is where everybody goes for lunch. Shinto. My current strategy is look pathetic and appeal to their humanity and hope they feel bad for me. Stop it. I always liked how yours looked because you know what you guys did, what Chinto and Maria did was they do the Lonely Unicorn. Am I saying that right? Is it Lonely Unicorn? It's the unicorn with the tear with the rainbow and the horn. I can't think of the name of your unicorn, Chinto. Put it in here so we can make everybody buy it. It's Saturday morning and I'm still feeling jet lag, so forgive me. But you would have your books. You guys were great at lease line. Maria especially was like out front. Out front. She is definitely the last unicorn. There it is. There we go. But you would have like I can't remember if it was a plush or a standee. There was something that like every time we saw what you had there, it attracted us over there. And then Maria, boom, had the personality of drawing in. No offense, Chinto, you were quieter, and you know that. She would like draw you in with that, but you had a visual style to your booth. Yeah, the plushies. That's what I'm thinking of. So you had the plushies, and it didn't feel like, oh, we're selling a row of plushies. It was decorated a certain way that attracted the eye that brought us over there. Plus, your character design was wonderful. Think about that with what you're doing. And once again, we're talking specifically about like at a convention, but does it have to be that? Chelsea does a thing very subtle at Writer's Row. I mean, you've got what? This much space? Space for 2 books, maybe? And for most authors, they pile the books up. And we have a way that we pile them and whatever. And there's lots of theories on how you display that. But Chelsea brings little stars and moons and little things that theme with her books. And it creates this neat little area. I know it because I watch customers engage with it. I watch people walk up and they go right to it because it has a curb appeal. It stands out. At the end of the day, it's still books on a table with every other book. And her covers are great, but so are a lot of the other covers there. But that little flair makes a difference. I saw a really great one. One of the authors in from the Books of Horror group, and I can't remember who it was, so forgive me. He got a thing rather than the tablecloth, which does help you stand out. He got a thing. He had a whole table, and he got a thing that he said was like a cardboard thing that went over the edge of the table. So it created this thing that almost looked like a book spine across the side of his table, and it had his name, and he had his books, but then he had, I forget what else he had on the thing, but it fit with the theme of what he has, and it made it really stand out. When I saw him in line with other authors at this thing, it was a picture online, and I was like, wow, one display thing that isn't another, tablecloth made him the most appealing in that group. And there were some incredible books, incredible authors that you would have been like, wow, I would have driven, 100 miles to meet that person. But I would have gone to his booth probably first because of the visual. And that's what I was seeing in Paris. These cafes really felt like they paid attention to that. How do we capture people? Well, we do it by having this crazy curb appeal and attention to detail. Okay, let's see what you say here. We're using natural evolution of breaking the mundane. People can't help but be attracted to what is different. It's in our biology. You are 100% right. What I'm going to leave that up here, Shinto. That's great. Let that sink in. So, once again, how can you apply that to your social media? I don't mean what you're posting. I mean, I guess you could do what you're posting. I mean, start out with how does it visually look when people go to it? Now, granted, you're on Instagram, you're not seeing everybody's homepage. Flip, 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 flip. So it is important what you're putting on your social media. The content is king, right? But then when they go to your thing, is there anything that makes them go, oh, cool? Here, I'm going to share one. See if she's still got it this way. Let's see. She does. So you can curate your page. There are actually apps that do it, or you can do it manually, which is hard. But look, if you can see it, this is one picture. This is one picture. So if you were to scroll through, look at this. This whole thing is like an ad. Here's a whoops. There's a vertical one. And actually that was a good example. You can see as a post, not great. As part of the home, looks awesome. So Lady Lormick, it's Lorelei. Lady. Here, I'll put it in the chat. I want everybody to follow her because she does a really nice job with this. There we go. So Lorelei is promoting all sorts of things on here. She's promoting acting, voice work, cosplay, all sorts of things that she's involved in. But her Instagram, when you go to it, is this really cool thing, and it's breaking the mundane. It's different. Now, if I'm on Instagram and I'm thinking I'm going to just find her, You know what? She does a lot of single panel things that are good content. She does a lot of stuff that you just pass by because it's part of a fan. It's part of a sword. Uh, okay. But when you go to her thing, I mean, I remember it. I remember her Instagram because visually so stunning when you go to her homepage. What are you doing? Are you doing that type of strategy? And am I saying you have to? No, what I'm saying is you have to think about it. You have to figure out, how do I stand out? How am I, you know, looking different, capturing that attention, making myself memorable. The other thing I noticed in Paris, we went to a couple of, like, for Americans, the easiest way to say it is shopping mall. There were these shopping areas. But Paris is a fashion hub, right? So it was full of high-end designers. Uh, like, you may go to Water Tower Place. Here we go. This is a great way to say it. You go to Water Tower Place, which, if you're in Chicago, you've probably been to. It's a high-end shopping mall, and it has higher-end things in it. But it is very much a bunch of boxes. And if you go to the Dior store at Water Tower Place, sure, it's high-end and it looks great and visuals, blah, blah, blah. But it is a box, a small box within a big box. And in malls like that, most of what they're doing is destination shopping. It's all these various floors, and you go in and you look at the thing and you go, "Oh, there's a Dior store. I want to go to Dior." You're not walking by and going, "Ooh, that captured my attention." Now they may do something in their windows. At Water Tower Place, I would say Lego probably does about the best job with windows that you see. Uh, a lot of them for clothing, it's just mannequins with their clothes on. It's not visually, like, stunning other than you go, "Oh, wow, look at those red whatever." But in Paris, I felt like they made use of their space to stand out. When you went by the Dior thing, it was like a Dior experience. Even the airport had it. There was a I think it was a Dior store or a Chanel store at the airport, and, like, out front, the whole wall was this, like, lit up thing with a window that had a unique feel and look to it, and then it had their branding on it, and you were like, "Wow, look at that." You go to their website, you see that same kind of thing. Now, we all know that. We all go to websites, and some of them stand out really great, and some of them are, like, wow, okay, it's just information. Uh, but this was their curb appeal in the place. And what I noticed in Paris was a lot of these places were not boxes within a big box, they were open floors. So you wander from thing to thing, and as you walk into the next area, they needed to create a completely unique experience. It needed to be, I walk into the Dior section, I'm in Dior, and you knew it. One that stood out to me, and their windows are this way too. One thing that stood to me was, we were out in front, and there was this area which had these, like, these huge buildings, and each one was a shopping thing. One of them was all full of, like, cookware and restaurants. One was all high fashion, right? And out in front, they don't have the big display windows. They might have a couple of things, but it wasn't like you could go, like, Dior couldn't take a window into a whole thing. They could put, like, a lit poster up thing that would look really cool. But those you can see, that's a bus stop to me, right? But then up above, there were these walkway things, and that's where I was noticing displays, and they must pay a fortune to get those. Well, the one stood out to me. We're sitting on the street, we're eating our lunch because that's how we are. We brought our own lunches, and we're sitting out there on these stone things or cement things, and I'm looking around trying to take it all in, and there's one of these things, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, wow, that looks really cool. But the clothing looked more like what I wear. It was kind of this type of thing, and I was like, oh, what's that? Because everything else was, Dior, and it was Carhartt. Which here, have you ever seen a Carhartt display? No, you see a rack at Farm and Fleet, sometimes at the gas station. There, this was treating Carhartt as fashion. It had this unique advertising. It had these things, and I was like, wow. It attracted the eye so much. It stood out. It stood out to the point that, like here, I would never even think about Carhartt. You might see something and go like, oh, hey, I need a jacket and it's on sale. I'll get it. And the quality is really good, right? Got a good reputation, but it's not something that you go, ooh, I want to look like that with that jacket or whatever. But here, the way they displayed it, all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, that looks really cool. I want that. So what is it about what you do that you can make people say, I want that? If you were competing in Paris in one of these malls with what you do, how would you stand out? So if I'm a podcast and they open a podcast mall, okay, first of all, nobody's making money there. That's stupid. But let's say they did. What do I create that makes me stand out? For most podcasters, they're going to say you make yourself a celebrity, you have T-shirts, you have whatever. Sure. But what is that curb appeal that makes people flip by and go, that? I've been messing with that with YouTube. Changing the visuals. I know I talked about this on a couple episodes ago. I was talking about the visuals on YouTube, the difference between here's a missized picture or just a screenshot and something that stood out and attracted attention. That once again, there's a whole theory to what colors you're using, how you're showcasing things. I can tell you from experience, because I've been really actively doing that with certain shows, trying to see what stands out. And boy, it's making a difference. Our numbers are going up. Now, are they anywhere close to where they should be? No. No, we're not there yet. And I haven't been paying that much attention to it because I'm paying attention to so many other things. But I do go in occasionally and look at it and go, I wanted to up that visual thing and see if I do this, will it make a difference? And it is. I'm creating a curb appeal to our YouTube channel. And when I see things that are not matching it, that are on my channel, I'm trying to, when I say bury them, I don't mean hide them, but I am hiding them from the first experience because they're not ready yet. I'm trying to create a new experience. So when you go and you go, oh, wow, this is every show that was ever on NBC, and they all look attractive and I can get to them. Look at Netflix. Netflix does the same thing. Like when you scroll through and you're looking at stuff, you see all these different things that they're trying to attract you. One thing I'll point out about that, have you ever noticed? It used to be like if they had Seinfeld, it had the Seinfeld logo and maybe like some image that you find on IMDb. Now, periodically they change it and it will look like it's a screen capture of a moment that stands out from it. I'm sure they're probably AI generated, where not generated, but AI chosen, where it's like, what's the point in Seinfeld that everybody knows? Computer says it's this moment when Elaine is pushing George. Boom, that becomes the cover art logo, and that's the cover art. It's a different thing, but it's trying to make it stand out so that when you see it, you're like, oh, this is funny. Oh, I know what that is. Okay, let's cover a couple of these things. Ginto, Cart was in vogue for a brief time during the shut-in times. Yeah. But was it thought of as a fashionable thing or more as like, yeah, these are good things and this is quality, it's a good price point. It certainly wasn't displayed here at Water Tower Place in the Carhartt store, which doesn't exist, like it was in Paris. Amazon Prime has the worst interface. It visually annoys me. Netflix does a better interface. Yeah, truly. Truly. We can't even get into the interfaces and how bad the user experience is on a lot of these. Netflix really does have it right. And visually, it's definitely better. Amazon's is terrible. But we're not here to fix Amazon. They have enough money, they can hire some people. If they haven't hired me yet, I don't care. Go do your thing. Just know that you could have a much better experience and make more out of it by having that differentiator. Other than the differentiator is our name is Amazon. Let's see. Another thing I noticed was, now this was cool, but I wasn't seeing any of this that I'm talking about. When you walk along the Seine, there is there are these little display things, boxes, people close them up, open them up, that are full of books and artwork. And for me, I'm walking by these and I'm thinking, like, they were cool, they kind of catch your eye. We didn't buy anything at any of them. And I was like, one of the things that in my brain I was thinking is, well, that's where you think, right? Was there's a missed opportunity here. Where are where are the artists and the writers renting these things? Now, maybe they're locked up. Maybe it's, getting those is a fortune and so many people have them or they're grandfathered in or whatever. I don't know. But boy, I walked by and I was like, this could be the greatest artist alley of all time. If I was the person in charge of renting them, I would curate it. I would want to curate it and have applications for people to put their stuff, but I would want to make it look like an artist alley. And I don't mean comic book art exclusively. I mean, there should be that in there. There's a rich history of that in Paris. Where is that rich history of art? I didn't see it. What I saw was a lot of these things where they take the oversized books and magazines and they cut the picture out and they frame it. Or not frame it. They put a thing on it so it looked like a backing, so it looked like it was a piece of art. And they sell it for $20. And you go, oh, wow, that looks great. Well, yeah, but it's just something they cut out of a magazine, something they cut out of a whatever. To me, that's a huge missed opportunity. Make it into almost like an artist alley. And now we get into, why would you stop at any one of those? What is their curb appeal? And there, the only thing that stood out was this one had artwork that looked like it was from magazines. This one had books. This one maybe was science fiction books in French. But they didn't tell you that's what they were. You could notice it as you walked by. But where was the curb appeal? Now, I'm sure they don't want people on the street hawking, their wares, because we didn't have any lease line capture at all. Nobody approached us at all about any of it. And that's fine. I actually prefer that. I'd rather be able to walk through and check it out. Just like at a Comic-Con, like I mentioned, Maria is really good at the lease line capture because she's so friendly and you walk by and she's like, hey, how you doing? But she's not doing, come see my stuff. Hey, don't you want to buy this? And that's what we didn't experience there as well, which I appreciate. A nice smile and a wave would have been nice, but that's okay. That's okay. But I wasn't seeing anybody doing anything to make them necessarily stand out. If your gig was I buy stuff at estate sales and I take it to a flea market and make 20% over 50% over what I paid at a flea market. I mean, it's a great business model if that's your thing. But if you're at a flea market, generally, doesn't everything look the same? They might have different stuff, but that all looks the same. How do you stand out? What is your curb appeal that makes people stop and go, oh, wait, I want to look through what they have? I noticed this. They have a lot of these tourist shops. And walking by them, I was noticing, like, we were in an area by Notre Dame, and there were a whole bunch of these. If there's a 5% difference in product, I'd be shocked. The same stuff, each one of them, is what it looked like to me. I know there were little differentiators, but generally, no. And the differences in the fronts were, this one put hats and scarves at the front. This one put all postcards at the front. The second you cross the threshold, it's the exact same inside. They have the same hats. They have the same postcards. They have the same artwork. They have the same whatever. So what is it that made people stop at them? And I was trying to watch Maeve and Molly because they did go into a few of them. And I was hanging back on the street and I was like, why did they stop at this one and not the one next to it? It's the exact same stuff, but they'd go like, ooh, and they'd go in. I have no answer. I asked Maeve, and she said, well, they had postcards up at the front. We needed postcards. Okay. So it literally was the product that grabbed you. That's a hard one to work with, you know, because you don't know. What's my biggest seller, I guess you could put up there. My biggest seller is scarves. Okay, I'm going to make sure I put those up at the front so that people walking by are like, ooh, scarves. But I didn't see unique displays. I didn't see things that attracted attention, curb appeal. To me, they could have all been one owner with all the same store, just putting different product at the front of each one. We did go into one that was a shop, and in its windows, it did a little bit higher end. It had a lot of those things, but it promoted the higher end a little bit more. So that one probably had about 20% different than everybody else. And you know what? That captured us. I bought a hat there. I saw hats everywhere. I saw the same hat I got in a number of places, but I bought it there because that had a curb appeal that made me go in and I felt like I wanted to buy something there. What do you do? Do you pay attention to that in what you're doing? Now, if we go back to your website, what is it about your website? And here's the nice thing with the website. You can change it on the fly. You can change it all the time. Design your website. Analyze what's happening with it. There's all the factors. There's the SEO. There's the blah, 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 blah. Okay. But what makes it stand out? What's the visual? Do some test marketing. Ask your friends to look at it. What do you think of my website? They'll tell you. This is coming from somebody who's designed a lot of bad websites. Because I put it up and you do all this work and you're like, I got the colors, I got the this, I got the that. I think it looks great. And then you look at it 2 months later and you go, oh my God, what was I thinking? Look at the curb appeal. Try to separate yourself. Try to get others to look at it and give you feedback. Pay attention to all those little details, just like I was talking about with the cafes. What are the little details? Okay, let's see what. Chinto, you're very active today. I love it. I always had an idea that I've never put out because I get distracted like a cat with multiple lasers shining against the wall. You do, Chinto. Oh, that wasn't a question. I have many short stories, and I wanted to create a cabinet of curiosities of sorts, and each door would look different. I would charge people to choose a door and take one copy of the book behind the door they chose. That is a brilliant idea. I love it. Have you ever seen Art Labs? Do you know what Art Labs is? In Elgin, there's this group called Art Labs, and it's just a bunch of local artists that got together, and they, the old cigarette machines? That's what they do. They put little unique art pieces in this cigarette machine. You don't know what you're going to get. It might say, I've seen it where it says like which artist it is, or it might be like, you're going to get a sugar skull. But when you pull the thing, what you get is whichever artist's sugar skull. It's not the same. It's all blind. Oh, I love it. I love the Art Labs thing. That is a brilliant idea, Chinto. And that's the kind of thing, I mean, yeah, you can take that to a Comic-Con, but let's think outside of the box with that. Chinto, you do something like that, you go to some place like, and these are like, let's say you did all like horror, right? Take it to a place like Brood. It's a coffee shop in Chicago. And you say, hey, do you want to have my cabinet of curiosities in there where people can put in money and get a chapter or get a short story blind out of the cabinet of curiosities? It's all horror. If they didn't do that, they're fools. I figured I would use the unique cabinet as the attention grabber. I love it. I love it. I think that's a brilliant idea, Chinto, and I think you should do it. And I know you get distracted. I mean, you could even do it with artwork, just like Art Labs does. You could do it with all sorts of things. I had actually thought of taking the idea from Art Labs because what is marketing but stealing from each other? Taking that same kind of idea and doing some kind of pull thing like a cigarette machine or some kind of blind thing, and having artists that or people that have been on alley chats and say, hey, give me, you know, 10 things this dimension. We're going to put it in a thing. We're going to use it as a fundraiser. Take it to, you know, C2E2 and see what happens. Don't even need a booth. Let me just put it out there and see what happens. You just have to ask for permission, right? Take it to your outside of your panel room. I think that's a great idea. Now I get distracted, and also that's a hell of a lot of work for me, who's not doing the creation of all of it. So that's why it hasn't happened. But Chinto, yeah, it's brilliant. I would definitely think about what goes in it, though. If it like theme it, it's horror, it's romance, it's comics, it's whatever. Have that cabinet of curiosities next to it. Have a gumball machine with the pop up. People love those. 25 cents, and they get a little unique drawing or tattoo of your characters. Put a whole bunch of characters in there. You would, and it's not about how much you're going to make at that. You're not going to make very much of those things. It's about branding and building. You put temporary tattoos, you're going to walk around C2E2, you're going to see all these kids with your unicorn tattoo on because they all put 25 cents in to get one off of that thing. And you walk out with 20 bucks. But you did some great branding. And once again, you put that in your booth. Now that's unique. Nobody has a cabinet of curiosities, an interactive thing at their booth. How can you make your booth experiential? Now there's the question. You're trying to sell what? Your brand, your goods, okay? Probably your goods at a place like that because you've got to pay the bills. But if you can make it experiential, leading them down the funnel to purchase, you are going to win when you're there. And I know that takes a lot of thought and a lot of planning. But you know what? If you can put that muscle in early and work on it early, figure these things out early, have a system, take it to a con, see how it works, tweak it. Eventually, your art labs, you're the ones that we know. When I see that thing, I know what we're getting with that, and it's awesome. Those guys are trying to sell art. So they sit at their table selling art. But they have this cigarette machine that has the unique art thing, and they're like, hey, try it, see what you get. And I've watched them. I've watched people do it, and they're like, oh, wait, this is really cool. Who did this, little zine? Oh, that's Carl right here. They get into a conversation. Now Carl has an opportunity to sell. And that cigarette machine is unique. It stood out. Your cabinet of curiosities stands out. It's an experience. I love it. It's a better experience than we have a cosplayer standing in our booth exclusively. That's it. Yeah, sure, that can work. Cosplayer is always good. But what can you do beyond that? Make it experiential. I think that's awesome, man. Okay, I think we've talked this one out. So that was my trip to Paris. That was some of the thoughts I had around it. So let's say a couple other things here. First of all, I love that people are watching this after the fact. I hope that they are sharing it. I would love for you to be more interactive and chat with me. I would love to answer questions. Also, you can see on the bottom there, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com/smgpods. I have not done the stuff that you would get from it because nobody's bought me a coffee yet. But as soon as people start doing it, I've got a couple of ideas. The one that I really think we're going to do is a short, unique, like 20-minute podcast once a month that you only get if you're doing the Buy Me a Coffee. Something unique. And actually, I'm thinking we might make it tailored to what the audience wants. If they want geeky stuff, we'll do that. If they want stuff related to this, we'll do this. Who knows? If I've got both and it's consistent, then we build something for each. The other thing is, I'll do a little promoting here. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel at New Media Lab. I'm actually still in development on integrating this show into that. I've put a few things up, but I have been working on it, and there's some really cool things that we're going to be doing with that. And then also Southgate Media Group. That YouTube channel has been great. And in fact, I'm about to make a big change at some point here, probably the first of the year, where new episodes of any of our stuff is going to go to our Patreon. You don't have to pay for it. You could go and you can subscribe on Patreon, but you'll get the stream of our shows. I'm going to stop posting all of it on Facebook. I'm done with a lot of that. You'll get some things, but Patreon is where, if you're a Southgate Media Group fan, you want to see what's going on, even with our old shows, Patreon is where it's at. And then we will have paid tiers that have unique things. I just mentioned Patreon. There it is. Patreon.com/Southgate Media Group, which once again, we've let kind of sit around, and we're no longer letting it sit around. Pour Over Marketing has its own Substack. Go to robsroundup.substack.com. We have Pour Over Marketing, and we have the Mic Drop. Those are the two Substacks I write. And once again, I'm in the middle of writing a book. As soon as I am through this book, those are going to be a priority. We're going to have consistent blogs and newsletter things coming out of there. So get in there early if you're not a subscriber. And also, if you are interested, I didn't even get to talk about Huracan. Next week, we're going to talk about Huracan. Don't let me forget. Anybody watching, don't let me forget Huracan next week. We're going to talk about. Every Saturday, I do at 8 a.m., I do Pour Over Marketing. Bring coffee. I know I do. If you spike it, you might have a problem. It's 8 a.m. But come with questions. Okay, so the other thing I was going to say is I do consulting and coaching. If you want a free session, just contact me. Write to rob@smgpods.com. That's the easiest way to reach me. Write it in the show notes and say, DM me. Just say, hey, Rob, I wanted to sign up for a free session. I'll send you the Acuity scheduler, and boom, let's get you a free session so we can talk about what is it you're trying to achieve. I usually ask what's the immediate goal and see if we can solve something in that first session. And who knows? A lot of times I've solved the basic thing in the first session, and then we go on and see, hey, is consulting right for you? Can I coach you into other things? And I do consulting and coaching, both things. So please, if you're interested, my doors are open. I've hung up the coach is in sign. And if you know anybody else that has a project they want to achieve, if you know somebody who's like, hey, I've always wanted to write a book, I've always wanted to put out an album, I've always wanted to, have them reach out to me because I help them with that stuff. Or they have marketing questions. I'm doing 2 sessions on Monday with people that are so terrified of their social media. And I'm like, look, we're going to, in that session, those are 2 free sessions. By the end of it, they should be able to walk if they need to with their social media and feel so much more comfortable. If they want to get more advanced, that's when we go into our actual paid sessions. So if you want that, you want a free session, contact me, rob@smgpods.com, or any other place that you're engaging with this. All right, that's it. Thank you for coming to Pour Over Marketing. Chinto, thank you for being so active. It was so much fun. Yeah, you have a great weekend too, Chinto. It was good to talk to you. Good to talk to Serena and Chelsea, and let's make this a thing. Let's grow this thing because I think we're starting to really catch our stride on what we're talking about here. Um, I definitely want to get the engagement up, see what we can get going. We are getting a lot of views after the fact. I want more engagement. I'm greedy for it. All right, everybody, have a great weekend.